recording?
Yes, sir.
Sergeant Kordecki, I work with Mark.
Jamie Ramirez, I work with Mark.
Bend down a little bit. There you go.
Michelle Mays, I work with Mark.
Okay. Let me know when you're ready. Now?
Yep, go.
Good morning. My name is Mark Miller. I am going to be briefing today on, let's just start it off with a question. Really the question is, do you remember where you were September 11th, 2001? Really, if you look at that particular day, basically it did a few things. It reaffirmed the need for security in our country. It reaffirmed the need for security at home. And it really set up the whole concept that we need to establish strong offensive and defensive security in our country. One of the greatest areas of that is really our bases. One of the best bases that I'll be speaking on today is Scott Air Force Base. One of the things that I have done since I've been here a year at this term, and been here 2 years, so a total of 3 years I've been here. I've taken in a lot of information about this particular base. At the same time, as I've studied over the last few weeks of being in this course about this particular topic, to give you a very good briefing. So understanding the history and the proud heritage of Scott Air Force Base will give us a strong understanding of this information, and will also establish, maybe some security for you, that as the military unit and Scott Air Force Base, we're doing what our need to protect you and your family. So today, really, I'm going to talk about Scott Air Force Base, Scott Field back then. I'm going to look at a couple historical data, some key points, and then really I'm going to close with current capabilities. Let's take a look at the birth of Scott Air Force Base, and back then it was called Scott Field. Really, in 1917, the War Department decided they wanted to expand its aviation throughout our country. So what it did was it looked for particular bases and particular areas that would be really good to establish an aviation area. And what they did was they decided they wanted to put it somewhere in the Midwest. And eventually, through a lot of debates and contracts, they settled on a small lot of land just right close to Belleville, Illinois. And this was the birthplace of Scott Air Force Base. And at that time was called Scott Field. Some World War I influences we had here at Scott Field, basically one of the first balloon missions for reconnaissance. We also established an airship school. And basically what we had was a two-seat biplane that was established here to train our people to be able to fight in World War I and eventually go on and fight in World War II. Some World War II influences that we had was pilot training. In 1930, it established pilot training, and it was starting to bring in some of its better jets and its better planes and gearing up for World War II. It also was the first place for radio operations. So what it was a radio operation unit or squadron, and what it did was it established the first radio transmission while in the air or while being aviated. So looking at those two things of World War II influences, we really started expanding our aviation capabilities. And then eventually we went from the pilot training stuff from World War II and into where we are now, where we've moved to really an air mobility where we're moving cargo and people throughout the world. As we looked at that, let's look at two of the real wonderful historical things. And this came from Sergeant Smith at the Scott Air Force Base Library from the Scott Air Force Base Air Force News. And basically what it covered was Frank Scott. Basically, Frank Scott was a corporal. He was an aerial gunner. What he was at an air show with a Lieutenant Rockwell. And Lieutenant Rockwell was doing speed records and was really entertaining about 300 people. He brought Corporal Scott onto the plane, and as they got up about 150 miles in the air, basically they lost control of the plane and they all crashed. From this death, Frank Scott became the first enlisted aviation death in our history, and eventually became the reason we have named Scott Air Force Base, or Scott Field, after Corporal Scott. And in 1918, we had our first airlifted patients. We had a person that had broke his leg in multiple places, And what they did was they airlifted him, got him to safety, and got him for more medical needs, which was the first. And as we finish up this briefing, we're going to talk more about that aeromedical side. Lastly, what I want to talk about is some of the newest capabilities that we've established here at Scott Air Force Base. One of the first is we have 3 established commands here. We have Air Mobility Command, which is really about cargo and about people. And they move them throughout the world in theater for Iraq and Afghanistan, and really goes to the warfighting mission. We also have United States Transcom Command, which really, in looking at them, basically what they are is they are basically Air Force, Army, Air Force, and Marines. And what we're doing is we're basically getting people and getting cargo across the world. We also, as far as air mobility, as far as what we do here, is basically we move cargo, and we're breaking records every day with the amount of cargo we're taking to theater during the wartime status. We also look at moving personnel consistently from bodies to just places in the United States, places to the medical side, or just places across the world. Lastly, what we do is we have the air medical evacuation, which is basically medical care by air, moving patients from in theater from Iraq or Afghanistan or other places overseas to places where they can get the proper medical care. At the same time, while in the air, they're being taken care of by nursing and other things. A huge capability and a wonderful service for our fighting men who may be wounded. In conclusion, we've discussed the creation of Scott Field. We've looked at 2 significant past missions or past things that talk about Scott, and we also shared about current capabilities. Are there any questions? If none, I'd please if you take the moment to actually fill out your critique. That would be wonderful. Thank you.